The year 2011 began with a flood in Australia so vast it turned an area larger than Texas into a disaster zone. Little did we know then, there was much worse to come. In January, earthquakes hit Argentina, Chile, Iran, Pakistan, Tajikistan, and Tonga. In February, they hit Burma, the Pacific Islands, and the big one in Christchurch, New Zealand. Buildings were toppled, scores buried, 181 died. Survivors who crawled from collapsed office buildings were stunned.
It just came down, like, right down.
But the monster earthquake of 2011 was something out of a science fiction movie. The Great Japan earthquake was one of the strongest in recorded history. From 20 miles underwater, it created a tsunami 130 feet high that traveled 6 miles inland, causing cars and boats to bob like toys. It was a quake so powerful it moved the island of Honshu 8 feet. More than 15,000 people died and almost 5,000 are missing. Then, in a terrible twist, after the quake knocked out power at the Fukushima nuclear plant, the tsunami washed out its backup generators, the last line of defense against overheating. It would be the world's first triple meltdown, spreading radiation over a wide area. It was the worst disaster to afflict Japan since World War II. The world was still in shock when the southern and eastern United States experienced the worst rash of tornadoes in recorded weather history. The 2011 super outbreak, as it was called, included 4 monster EF5 tornadoes and led to almost 350 deaths and more than $6 billion in insured losses.
Tornadoes coming in the city. Massive tornado, massive destruction.
Then, just weeks later, on a Sunday afternoon in May, a mile-wide, multiple-vortex EF5 tornado plowed through Joplin, Missouri, obliterating whole sections of the town, killing 159 people and causing an
Epidemics of typhoid, diphtheria, and even the Black Death have afflicted areas of India and the former Soviet Union. Deadly new strains of malaria, tuberculosis, and cholera are becoming resistant to all known antibiotics and are killing millions of people. Even the common bacteria that causes pneumonia, children's ear infections, and many other everyday diseases are evolving into forms untreatable by all known medicines, threatening a chilling post-antibiotic era where even the simplest infections could quickly escalate into fatal diseases. Jesus said that there would be an abundance of pestilences or diseases marking the time of his return. Epidemics like AIDS will become widespread as we enter the final era of mankind upon this planet.
There shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in various places.
March the 27th, 1964. Alaska is devastated by a massive earthquake measuring 8.4 on the Richter scale.
AL7, DG8, calling any station. It's an emergency, any station on this frequency.
Amazingly, in the 30 years since the Great Alaska Quake, there have been as many major earthquakes as in the entire previous 2,000 years of world history. The World Almanac tells us that there were only 21 earthquakes of major strength between the years 1000 and 1800. But between 1800 and 1900, there were 18 major earthquakes. In the next 50 years, between 1900 and 1950, there were 33 major quakes. And between 1950 and 1991, there were 93 major earthquakes, almost tripling the number of the previous half-century and claiming the lives of 1.3 million people around the world. This dramatic increase of severe quakes has led many scientists to predict that we are entering a new period of great seismic disturbances. The Bible also clearly predicts that the last days will be a time of great seismic activity, with the earth wheeling to and fro like a drunken man, and the towers and the cities of the nations falling. January the 17th, 1994, an earthquake measuring 6.6 on the Richter scale causes $30 billion worth of damage in Los Angeles. Seismologists predict that California's imminent big one could be 50 times more powerful. January the 17th, 1995, over 5,000 people are killed and 26,000 injured in the Great Hanshin quake in Japan. The port city of Kobe is devastated, its infrastructure destroyed, and over 300,000 people made homeless. Japanese scientists at the Earthquake Center in Tsukuba predict a much stronger quake measuring over 8 on the Richter scale could hit the Tokyo area in the very near future. When either the California or the Tokyo quakes inevitably occur, the death toll, the devastation, as well as the impact on the world economy will be unimaginable. Imagine an ancient prophet seeing a vision of our modern superhighways with hundreds of cars speeding along with their headlights blazing at night. How would he describe it? Now remember, he'd never seen or even imagined anything like an automobile before. Well, 2,600 years ago, the prophet Nahum foresaw that in the last days before Jesus returns,
the chariots shall rage in the streets. They shall jostle one against another in the broad ways. They shall seem like torches. They shall run like the lightnings.
automobiles racing along in the night must have looked like lightning to him. And they certainly do jostle one another in the broad ways. In an average year in the US alone, there are 19.5 million crashes in which 4 million are injured and 45,000 killed. Nahum's prophecy brings to mind another important prediction regarding conditions in the last days, given in 534 BC to the prophet Daniel.
Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased.
God was telling his prophet, Daniel, I'm giving this vision of the last days to you, but it's not for you. It's not for your time. It's for the end time, when
many shall run to and fro.
Are many people running to and fro today? It's incredible when you think that people's primary means of travel hadn't changed for thousands of years until just a little over a century ago. In 1789, it took George Washington 8 days to travel 200 miles to his inauguration in New York City. The fact that it took 8 days is not significant. What is amazing is that Julius Caesar could have traveled just as rapidly. No real progress had been made in transportation over thousands of years. But in a very short period of time, look how mankind has advanced. Now man not only drives at enormous speeds, but a jet can fly around the world in 24 hours and a spacecraft in 80 minutes. People travel today more than they ever traveled before. International tourism is a huge multi-billion-dollar business involving over 200 million people traveling outside their own countries every year throughout the world. Spending on tourism worldwide totaled more than $3 trillion in 1992 alone, and tourist traffic is expected to double over the next 10 years.
Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased.
Knowledge has certainly increased within this generation almost beyond belief. In fact, research studies have shown that the total store of human knowledge is now doubling every 8 years. 80% of all the scientists who have ever lived are alive today. Every minute they add 2,000 pages to man's scientific knowledge, and the scientific material they produce every 24 hours would take one person 5 years to read. About 500,000 new books are published every year. In 1970, when Apollo 13 was lost in space, computers worked out in 90 minutes a way to bring it back. It would have taken a scientist working with a pencil and paper over 1,000,000 years to figure out how to do the same feat. But even since 1970, computer technology has developed so fast that if the auto industry had developed at the same rate, you would today be able to buy a Rolls-Royce for $3, and you could fit 8 of them on the head of a pin. The most basic building block of computer technology, the transistor, was invented at Bell Labs in 1948. In 1994, a computer chip could hold 3.1 million transistors, more than twice as many as the previous year's model. By the end of the decade, a chip will contain more than 1 billion transistors. Machines today have become so complicated, only the most highly trained technicians can even understand them. But have all these amazing scientific discoveries and technological breakthroughs made mankind any happier or more civilized? It seems like the more gadgets and luxuries with which man tries to find happiness and satisfaction, the more discontented and miserable he becomes. In our day and age, knowledge has certainly increased. But although the so-called developed countries such as the US claim to have the most advanced and expensive educational systems that the world has ever known, yet they've been turning out the most confused, ignorant, and violent. For in verse 37, Jesus prophesied that as it was in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the days just before he returns. Well, how were things in the days of Noah?
And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every imagination of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. The earth also was corrupt before God, and the earth was filled with violence.
In the US, a teenager shoots his father because he
to the growing desperation in the Horn of Africa. More than 11 million people are at risk from hunger in Somalia, Kenya, Ethiopia, and Djibouti. Somalia is the worst hit by famine, drought, and a civil war with Islamic militants. Nearly 500,000 refugees have left Somalia to go to Kenya. Most are headed to the Dadaab camp just
There
inside.
are more than 10 million people in the Horn of Africa suffering from the effects of a severe drought and famine. Last night, the World Food Program made its first delivery of aid to Somalia since the UN declared a famine. But getting food and medical supplies to the victims has not been easy. The al-Qaeda-linked group al-Shabaab is blocking foreign aid workers from entering parts of Somalia it controls. That means more than 2 million people are being cut off from the...
Now to the famine in the Horn of Africa. U.S. officials say that more than 29,000 children have died of starvation in Somalia over the past 90 days. Famine's now spread to 3 other parts of the country. The United Nations first declared famine in the Bakul and Lower Shabelle regions 2 weeks ago. Now, acute malnutrition and death rates are accelerating in several districts of Middle Shabelle. The same hunger crisis is hitting refugee settlements in the capital, Mogadishu. And the Afguir corridor has also been declared a famine zone. The UN is warning that more than 3 million Somalis, that's half the population, need immediate help.
Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day. It's a new life for me, yeah. It's a new dawn, it's a new day.
We're back now with the puzzling story of a massive kill of wildlife in the state of Arkansas. Birds falling out of the sky, the result of some sort of trauma, and fish found dead in the water, thousands of them in separate incidents in the same state.
They rained down on a small Arkansas town like a scene from a horror movie. Thousands of dead blackbirds on front lawns, and so many in the street, drivers could barely avoid them.
I went out to get the paper, and I looked and I said, wait a minute, what is this? And there were birds all over. We probably had 14 or 15 just in the front yard.
As many as 5,000 bird carcasses littered across a 1-mile radius after dropping from the sky on New Year's Eve.
I thought the mayor was messing with me when he called me. He got me up at 4 o'clock in the morning and told me he had birds falling out of the sky.
Geez, what a way to start the new year, right?
Yes, sir. Last year we started it with floods, and this year birds.
What could have caused it? As the state veterinarian examined the birds today, theories have run the gamut. From their being hit by lightning or high-altitude hail, to being spooked to death by New Year's Eve fireworks.
It really is like something out of a horror film. Every yard in the area looks a lot like this one. Dozens of birds litter the ground, and the scariest part is no one knows how they got here.
Everybody's kind of amazed at this happening.
Most of the animals are red-winged blackbirds, like this one. And they're not just on lawns. We found so many of them on some roads that it was difficult to drive without crushing one.
The dead drumfish are now littering a 20-mile section of the Arkansas River near Ozark.
And adding to the mystery, a massive fish kill also here in Arkansas, just one day earlier.
As many as 100,000 drumfish dead along a 20-mile stretch of the Arkansas River. It's 100 miles from the dead birds, but the internet was ripe with conspiracy theories. One Twitter user writing, 5,000 dead birds, now 100,000 dead fish. Definitely an alien invasion happening in Arkansas. The experts call it coincidence.
Extremely unusual. Having two events like this at practically the same time. We don't think that there's any connection whatsoever.
Too alarming. Some have called biblical type events that have many residents wondering what's next.
Back now to our top story, a terrible mystery gripping the world right now. Birds, fish, and all kinds of creatures just dropping dead in huge numbers for what seems like no reason. Just in the last 2 weeks, the theories and speculation running rampant.
Hundreds of dead seals in Labrador. These seals washed up around Hopedale. There are similar reports from other communities. No one knows why these animals died.
Andrews County Humane Society is investigating the death of 200 cows.
The cattle were discovered on a farm field on 4th Street in Amherst. Today, the bodies were taken out in semi-loads to be disposed of. The Portage County Sheriff's Department says the animals died.
They've occurred suddenly with devastating results. A series of huge fish kills, the latest involving 2 million fish in Maryland.
On Kent Island, Maryland, along the Chesapeake Bay. Wildlife officials say roughly 2 million of one particular species died very suddenly. But this came at about the same time that thousands of birds died suddenly in Arkansas and Louisiana, and millions of fish were killed in separate incidents from Arkansas to South America to the South Pacific.
This is all a sign of the apocalypse. Authorities in northern Italy say more than 1,000 turtle doves have dropped dead over the past 5 days. It's the latest in a series of unexplained sudden death incidents affecting creatures in the sky and underwater. The events have sparked a media frenzy, with doomsday speculators saying it hails the end of the world. 8,000 dead turtle doves in Italy, hundreds of birds dead in Rockwell, Texas, 500 red-winged blackbirds in Louisiana, 100 birds in Sweden, 3,000 dead red-winged blackbirds in Arkansas, several hundred dead in Kentucky. On the fish, several hundred snapper fish in New Zealand, thousands of dead fish in Florida, 40,000 devil crabs in the UK, 80,000 drumfish in Arkansas, 2 million spotted croakers in Maryland in the last 2 weeks.
Well, thousands of fish are dead at the mouth of a shipping channel, as well as a dead whale that was reported in Venice today. The species include crabs, stingrays, eel, drum, speckled trouts, and redfish.
In the UK, 40,000 velvet crabs littered the coast. Brazil, 100 tons of lifeless fish floated. And in Sweden, jackdaws fell in the dead of the night. Across the world, the bizarre phenomena of creatures raining down or washing up on shore has mystified scientists.
The video you're about to see is not a gravel road. Those are the dead fish.
This footage that was taken recently was in Rio de Janeiro, I believe, or Santa Cruz, South America. I'm not exactly sure what's happening, but all over the world things are changing. We're talking about environmentally, the weather-related changes may have an effect. Look at all these dead animals, these dead fish. This is in Bolivia, South America. Alligators dead everywhere. Whatever was in the water is coming up dead. This is happening all over the place. It's happening in the United States. It's happening in South America. What is going on? I've got footage of other things happening in the Middle East on some of the beaches where there's just millions and millions of seashells that are just washing up. The dead animals that live within the shells are somehow just washing up on shore. All you see is an ocean of just dead.
200 dead cows in Wisconsin and 7,000 dead buffalo in Vietnam. What is happening?
I think the media is, by and large, not blowing it out of proportion. They're actually underestimating how serious it is.
Okay, folks, you never see me do this. I put this together in paint.net because I wanted to point out something for those of you who are not awake and what's going on. Right now, what we are looking at is World War III. In the making, guys. And I don't ever think it necessary to point something out to everyone. Now, of course, everybody knows that we've been in Iraq. And for those of you who don't know the Middle Eastern map, that's why I did this. Iraq, right here. I'm going to make a little circle here so you guys know where Iraq is. We've been in Iraq, and we've been in Afghanistan, and fighting there for a long, long time. See, I made it over there like a circle.